read from Mark 16. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll back the stone for us from the entrance?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. And they entered the tomb and saw a young man, an angel, dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be afraid, for you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. And he has been raised. He is not here. Look at the place where they laid him, and go, tell the disciples and Peter that he will be going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see them." So they went out and they fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were simply stunned. The Easter story is that tragically, perhaps inadvertently, unwittingly, we killed God's messenger. But God is not so easily rebuffed. Torture cannot stop God. As it turns out, even death does not stop God. And in the resurrection, God comes after us in love, transcending death. What kind of love is that? It's literally beyond our imagination, which is why our story is told beyond our imagining. Really, the most that we can know of divine love is the best of what we know of human love. The kind that reaches maturity, the profoundest love that we share with each other when we live our lives as gift. Like Amy Rosenthal, who wrote a piece this winter in the New York Times. She had a great marriage to her husband of 26 years. They raised 3 wonderful children, and one day she is seeing the doctor about an attack of appendicitis. When he does some tests and discovers that she actually has cancer of the uterus and it's advanced, and in a short amount of time, she started to die. She's a writer. She decided to publish one last piece. "You may want to marry my husband." She was old enough to have never been on Match.com or Tinder. And so she wrote a kind of personal reference from her experience of having lived with him for 9,490 days. She describes how she fell in love with him on the first date and thought to herself, even that night, "I think I'll marry this man." It took him a year to ask. And then she turned to some of his attributes. He's a sharp dresser. Our 2 adult sons, Justin and Miles, often borrow his clothes, and those who know him know that he has a flair for fabulous socks. He enjoys keeping in shape. And on the subject of food, man, can he cook. After a long day, there is no sweeter joy than seeing him walk in the door, plop a grocery bag down on the counter, and woo me with olives and some yummy cheese that he's procured before he gets started on the evening meal. Jason loves listening to live music. It's our favorite thing to do together. And I should also add that our 19-year-old daughter, Paris, would rather go to a concert with him than anyone else. He's an absolutely wonderful father, compassionate, and he can flip a pancake. And he paints. And if you're looking for a dreamy, let's go for it travel companion, Jason is your man. He has an affinity for tiny things, taster spoons, little jars, a mini sculpture of a couple sitting on a bench, which he presented to me as a reminder of how our family began. This is the kind of man Jason is. He showed up at our first pregnancy ultrasound with flowers. This is a man who, because he always is up early, surprises me every Sunday morning by making some kind of oddball smiley face out of items near the coffee pot, a spoon, a mug, a banana. Okay, guys, this is getting to be a little bit of a high bar, I recognize. This is a man who emerges from a mini-mart and says, "Give me your palm." And voila, a colorful gumball appears, and he knows I like all the flavors except white. Wait, did I mention he's incredibly handsome? I'm going to miss looking at that face of his. You know, if it sounds like our relationship was a fairy tale, it's not too far off, except for all the regular stuff that comes from 2.5 decades of playing house together. And then the part about me getting cancer, blech. I want more time with Jason. I want more time with my children. I want more time sipping martinis at the Green Mill Jazz Club on Thursday nights. But that's not going to happen. I probably only have a few days left of being a person on this planet. So I'm wrapping this up on Valentine's Day. And the most genuine gift I can hope for is that the right person will read this and find Jason, and another love story will begin. I'm going to leave this space intentionally empty as a way of giving the two of you the fresh start that you deserve. It's a beautiful piece. And if you're a man like Jason reading that, you don't know why you deserve to be loved the way that she loves him. But when you are, it's all grace and gratitude. This love, when it reaches its fullest potential, has this quality of blessing to it. It so wants the best for the other person that it can even let them go in a kind of poignant, non-possessive way. And that kind of love transcends death. It doesn't abrogate it. We still die. But love transcends death in a most poignant way. And you know what? God loves you more than that. You really can't imagine it. And the Easter message is that you too can bloom with God's love. You too can bless. And at the more profound moments of our lives, we come full circle from blessed to blessing others. In the endearing new show, This Is Us, one of the protagonists, Randall, is adopted. And his adoptive father went out of his way to soothe Randall when he was a child, encouraging him, always telling him how talented he was. He was an awesome father, his adoptive father. Randall had panic attacks, anxiety attacks, maybe because he was adopted, maybe because he was just predisposed to having panic attacks. Who knows? But when Randall had these panic attacks as a kid, his adoptive father would always step right in. He would hold his face up close, hands on either side, and walk him through this relaxation process. He'd say to him, breathe, just breathe. In and out they would go until the panic attack passed. It was a kind of primordial blessing that stuck. Randall gets older, he goes to college. His adoptive father dies. Randall grows up, gets a big job, makes partner, raises his family. And way leads to way. One day, things come together and he has a chance to actually meet his birth father. He always wondered what that story was like. Why did his parents give him up for adoption? Who were they? What are they like? And his birth father comes back into his life, and it's awkward, but they share some stories together, and he introduces his birth father to his children, and of course, grandfather and granddaughters make a super connection, which makes it easier for Randall to ask the more difficult, hard questions of his birth father. And he did ask him those questions, and his birth father was remarkably open to them. His birth father had been expecting that Randall would ask these difficult questions, and his birth father wants to process the difficult questions. As it turns out, he doesn't have a lot of time left on this earth. His birth father has a form of cancer that has very low odds of survival, and so he's chosen not to treat the cancer. He knows he has a limited amount of time. Way leads to way, and Randall's birth father asks him to make a road trip back to Memphis, where their people are from. And Randall finds out that he has this huge extended clan of relatives, and he wants to go meet them. His wife thinks it's a great idea, so the two of them go off on this road trip of sorts. They get to Memphis, and Randall's birth father was a musician. He played blues at the clubs on Beale Street that made B.B. King famous. And they go back and visit some of his birth father's old haunts, and they run into extended cousins, and then they run into other cousins, and they go to one of those family barbecues where there are dozens and dozens of distant relatives, and Randall gets this incredible sense of family and place and food that makes the Deep South so wonderful. And Randall's birth father starts to feel bad, so Randall gives him the keys to the hotel, and he goes and lays down. A couple hours later, Randall gets back to the room, and his birth father looks weak, ashen, wan. Randall asks him, what's going on, and his birth father tells him that he thinks he might be dying. Randall says to his birth father, "Well, how do you feel right now?" His birth father says back to him, "I'm scared." These two men don't know each other well. They don't have emotional intimacy. They don't have the physical intimacy of touch or contact or hug. They're developing that as they are there. This boy who was adopted so long ago has only just recently let his birth father back into his life. And like all of us, he's unprepared for the suddenness of this moment. His birth father looks suddenly so vulnerable and frail and weak. And then it comes out of him. The Spirit moves, and the blessing that he received as a child from his adoptive father comes back to him in full circle. And he takes his father's hands in his face around him, and he tells him, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just breathe. Just breathe." He passes on the blessing that he knows. It's the most spiritually powerful thing that we can release. And in the resurrection, God took the suffering and death of Jesus that he went through in dying on the cross and transformed it through redemptive compassion into a transcendent, hope-filled expression of love for all of us. And God can most certainly shine through the detritus of your life and the brokenness and the tragedy and the disappointments. And God can take your pain and with the Spirit make you too into a conduit of love and blessing to those around you who need it most, when they need it most, in a way that they can actually receive it. You, even you, have an awesome power to bless and soothe your people. My brothers and sisters, the healing hope of Easter upon you. You're loved more than you know, and you are a blessing to others more than you can imagine. Release the divine love, and may eternity shine through you. Amen.